Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about the OM System TG-7 camera. It's the follow-up to the previous model Olympus Tough TG series, and it's a great camera to take underwater if you're looking for something that's really small and lightweight and easy to travel with. So let's look at what it takes to put it in a housing. So I'm going to start with unboxing the housing. I've chosen to show you our housing that has a dome port to fit the Olympus F-Con T02 wide-angle fisheye lens. That's my lens of choice when I'm going to shoot underwater because it allows me to get much closer to my subject. It can also give you zoom through so you can shoot macro and wide angle on the same dive just using the zoom of your camera. It's super small and lightweight compared to a lens that you would attach to the front of a housing. Those tend to be bulky and you can only really use them if your camera's in the housing. This lens you could use on its own with the camera, even on the surface, and it's really compact and easy to use. So let's open the housing. You've got your housing with the dome port already attached. You can go directly to our videos from the QR code on the instruction manual. You've got a couple of Ikelite stickers that you can add to your gear. And you've got this accessory kit. So in here we have our lubricant and we also have our lanyard. Now this lanyard is a safety breakaway lanyard. You can attach it to either the lanyard hole on the housing or you can attach it to your handle assembly. But you do not want to carry your housing on the surface using the lanyard. It's only for safety while you're underwater to attach it to your wrist. It's breakaway so that if it was to get caught on something, it will snap apart and you won't be attached to something underwater, which could be a very dangerous situation. So keep that in mind. It's not going to hold the weight of your system on the surface, and it would break if you were trying to carry it by that. I'm going to open this bag because I'm going to use this tube of lubricant in my assembly of the housing. So I'll take off the neoprene protective port cover from the dome port and put that aside. So on my housing, I like that I have an ergonomic shutter lever that's on the side. That brings my shutter trigger all the way to the side, which is really comfortable to use underwater. I can also extend this trigger lever if I was to use a right handle so that it would be right there where my finger is. It's much more comfortable than trying to reach over to the top of the housing to press a shutter button. I also have a zoom control. I have the on-off control. I have the dials for the camera on the front and the back. And I have all of the push buttons on the back of the housing. So these push buttons are marked by laser engraved indicia. So that's never gonna fall off or fade. It's always there on the push button showing me where everything is. I also like that the record start stop button is bright red, so that stands out to me and makes it really easy for me to start and stop my video while I'm underwater. When I go to put my camera in, I'm going to set the housing down on the front of the dome port, flat on the table. There's two push buttons on the side of the locking latch on the side. So I'm just going to push those and pull it out and open. And then pull on the back of the housing to separate it from the front and open it. Now I'm showing you the red camera. They also have a black version of this camera that can be used in the same housing. And this same housing also fits the prior model Olympus TG-5 and TG-6 cameras. But I forgot to put the F-Con lens on first. So I'll take off the beauty ring on the front of the camera, revealing its bayonet mount. So the lens is going to attach, and I'm going to look for the white dot on the lens that tells me where to orient it. There's also a matching white dot on the front of the camera. So if I match those up, it should drop in and I can rotate it and align it and secure it to the front of the camera. So that's ready to go. Now I can go back and drop it into my housing again. And I push it all the way down to make sure that the camera is flat and touching the support ribs on the inside front of the housing. So now I'm gonna grab my tube of lubricant. So this tube looks small, but it actually will last a very long time if you just keep it inside of a little plastic baggie in your kit. So I'm only gonna squeeze a very tiny amount onto my index finger. And then I'm going to run this around the visible surface of the O-ring. I'm not even going to take my O-ring off to lubricate it. Unless there's a lot of sand or dirt on your O-ring, you can leave it on the housing when you lubricate it. Whatever excess I'm going to put inside of the housing along the housing sealing surface. So that's just going to make a really smooth movement when the housing goes to close and the O-ring is pushing into the sealing groove. Now I close the back, I put the latch over the projection on the side of the back, and then I press the latch closed. I want to make sure that it's clicked, and I can even pull on it a little bit to make sure that it's locked. Both of these buttons should have come back out. They should not be pressed in anymore. And that's it. My housing is set up and ready to use in the housing. I would typically want to turn it on, make sure all of my buttons and levers are working and that I understand what they're doing. And I would also try putting this in a rinse tank or a clean bucket of water and watching that I'm not getting water inside, that I'm not seeing a stream of bubbles coming out, that I know that it's waterproof when I get ready to dive. The good news is, if you were to have a problem with your housing, the TG-7 camera is also waterproof. So generally, it's probably not going to damage your camera if you were to make a mistake and something bad happens. And that's really nice feeling when you're getting ready to go diving. So now that I have my housing set up, I want to add a strobe. A strobe is going to bring out a lot of color and detail in my images that I'm not going to get if I shoot with the camera alone. So I've chosen to add the DS51 strobe. That's the most popular choice for this camera because it's also the smallest and lightest option that you can put onto the system. I can also use my DS51 strobe with all kinds of other systems and get TTL that's specific to that system in the future. So I could attach a Canon TTL transmitter or a Nikon or anything I want to transition to later down the road. The DS51 is going to be a great option that can grow with me as I grow in underwater photography. So let's get that open. So I have more stickers for my gear, the DS51 instruction manual, and my DS51 strobe. So I'm going to need a strobe arm to position this in relation to my system and also a tray and handle to attach the strobe to the housing. So let's get those things set up. So here I have my Action Tray 2 tray and handle. I'm going to open that up. And there's 3 sets of hardware here. I need the 1/4 mount hardware that has 2 screws and 2 washers in it. The other hardware is for different types of housings. I'm going to turn the housing over and I'm mounting my handle so that it's in my left hand when I'm holding the housing. So when you mount this, the Ikelite Made in USA is going to be visible from the front of the housing. All of our products here that we're showing you with the housing, the strobes, and all of our housings and strobes are made here in Indianapolis in the USA. So I'm going to align this with the 2 1/4 holes in the bottom of the housing. I add a washer to each screw and get it started into the mount. Then I'm going to take my screwdriver and get those really tight. And that's all there is to it. Now I have my tray and handle attached to my housing. It has a quick release button on the back, so that will allow me to attach my strobe arm. If I want to, I could add a second section to this tray so that I have a right handle, and then I would want to put a trigger extension on my shutter trigger. So now that I have my housing set up, I'm gonna have to put my strobe arm on the strobe. So I have my compact ball arm. And it has 2 clamps and a section that goes into the top of the quick release handle. So I'm going to loosen it enough that I will be able to fit the ball mount of the strobe in here. What I do is I turn one of the clamp plates 90 degrees, and that'll allow me to just put the ball on and then rotate it again so that they're parallel, and tighten the wing nut. Now I'm going to press my quick release button on the housing and slide that in, and it's attached. Now I need to add my RC1 TTL receiver, which is what's going to allow the strobe to communicate with the camera and give you automatic strobe exposure. And that's really helpful so that you can focus on framing your shot and making sure your settings and your shots are looking right in the camera. I'll take that out. It has a protective cap on the end of it. I can just unthread this and put the cap back in the box. It does have another tube of lubricant, but I already have mine open here, so I'll use that one. Then I need to remove the bulkhead cap from the DS51 strobe. So I'm going to take that off and put it aside. I'm going to put a small amount of lubricant on my fingertip. And again, I'm not going to take this O-ring off of the RC1. I'm going to leave it on there, and I'm just going to put this small amount of lubricant around the visible surface of the O-ring. I don't want to get any lubricant on these gold pins and receptacles or anywhere else on this, just a little bit on that O-ring. I'm going to line up the pins and receptacles of the strobe with the pins and receptacles of the RC1, push it in, and make sure it's threaded all of the way down. So that's tight, and this retaining ring is meeting the bottom of the bulkhead on the strobe. Then I need a fiber optic cord to attach these to my housing, and that's going to transmit the flash signal from my camera. So that has 2 ends that each have their little O-rings on them. This is not a waterproofed piece, so you don't have to worry about lubricating these O-rings or anything. It just pushes in to the RC1, and I'm going to give it a little wrap around this arm and then push it into the fiber optic port on the top of the housing. And you can see on the top of the housing that I have 2 fiber optic ports so that I could add 2 strobes to my system, which can be a really great idea if I'm shooting wide angle like I'm going to be doing with this circular fisheye lens. So I have everything set up now. I'm going to put batteries into my strobe. So I've taken off the battery door of the DS51, and I'm going to be really careful to make sure that my batteries line up with the sticker indicator that's on the inside of the battery compartment of the strobe. I don't want to put my batteries in the wrong direction, or that could have adverse implications. So I put my batteries in. The DS51 battery door is unique in that the O-ring stays in place. You don't need to lubricate it. You don't really need to do anything with it other than make sure it's clean. I'm going to make sure that's clean. I'm going to make sure the top of my battery compartment is clean. I'm going to orient it with the notch on the strobe, and I'm going to tighten it all the way snug with my fingers. Once I tighten it all the way, I'm going to be able to see that that O-ring has now formed a solid black line around the perimeter of the battery compartment. That's how I know that that is sealed. So this is ready to go. I'm going to turn my strobe on to TTL. I'm going to turn my camera on and make sure that I'm in the RC flash mode on the camera. And I'm ready to take a photo. Looks like everything works. And that's everything you need to know about setting up the TG-7 in the housing and getting ready to go shooting underwater. If you have any questions about this system, setting it up, or taking photos underwater, please send us an email to ikelite@ikelite.com because we're always here to help you. Thanks for joining me today and happy shooting.